Good morning, everyone. We're going to be going over the format for the course, just so that everyone has a good idea of what to expect and what's going to be required of them throughout the semester. So the general format here might be a little different than what you're used to. All of the lectures are recorded. When we actually meet on campus, we're going to have a in-class review as opposed to a standard lecture. There's going to be 2 sets of quizzes. There will be summary assignments required at the end of each block. And then the exams will typically be taken in class. However, if you want, you can take the test online using Respondus and Lockdown Browser. Just make sure you have set that up ahead of time, tested it out, and that you have a webcam set up. The final exam is a cumulative departmental final. There is an extra credit assignment, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and then I'll go over how grades are calculated, because that's one of the most common questions I get. So all the links for the lectures are posted on eLearn, and they, at this time, they are probably going to be on my work YouTube account, and if that changes, I'll be sure to let you know. Before each class, you are responsible for listening to each lecture in accordance with the course schedule, which will be posted on the news feed of eLearn. And I very strongly recommend that you take notes throughout the lectures, especially reviewing the vocabulary sheets, and that you come to class prepared to answer and ask questions over the material. But particularly during the review session, if there's anything you don't understand, feel free to stop me and ask a question about it, and we will go over that before the second quiz. So the primary purpose of the in-class review is to hit the high points, like the key high-yield topics from the lecture. I'm not going to sit there and go through every slide of the PowerPoint, because you're supposed to have already done that before class. So then we'll have after I quickly review all the high points with an abbreviated PowerPoint, then we're going to have a question and answer segment, and this is your time to ask questions. The emphasis here is that you have already been through the material before coming to class. You are at least somewhat familiar with it, and this is the time to figure out, okay, I'm not sure what's going on with this particular thing. To aid in that process, there will be a short ungraded quiz before the review, like when you first get to class. That's going to have roughly 10 questions, maybe more depending on the length of the PowerPoints involved for that particular week. And if you find yourself missing multiple questions on that, then we need to stop and go over those assignments, or those topics. And then after the review, there will be a second quiz that is graded. The questions will not be the same as the first one, but they will be similar and cover, similar topics. So if you did well on the first one and paid attention during the review, you should be golden at this point. If you didn't do so good on the first ungraded quiz, the review was your chance to get that straightened out before this one. And these quizzes are going to be worth about 10% of your grade. For each test block, we'll have, on average, 4 chapters on an exam. Some of them, if I'm remembering correctly, like exam 3 probably has 2 chapters, but those are much more in depth. So it's about the same amount of material, give or take. So for that particular test block, you will be required to turn in a summary of the information on the chapters that you will be tested on, and the latest that can be turned in is the day of the exam. So what I recommend doing is, as we're going through each week at a time, you are writing up your summary, and we'll talk about the format of it in just a moment, as you go along, so that way you just have to hand it in when it's time for the test. These summary assignments can be in any of the formats below. If you have a different format than what is listed below here, then let me know and we can talk about possibly using that format if it would suit you better. But the idea here is to have multiple ways of covering the information. So if you wanted to submit a video where you're talking about it, write a short paper, have a bulleted list with all the explanations on it. If you want to come to class with a giant poster with this poster over here is like, just for argument's sake, we'll say Krebs cycle, and this one's photosynthesis or something. Go for it. Just be aware that you have to cover everything in those chapters. You can submit a PowerPoint that is a summary of the material as well, but if you just copy and paste from the lecture PowerPoint, that's a 0, so don't do that. This has to be your own original work. There will be 5 exams, not counting the final. Each of them will be multiple choice and short answer, around 40 to 50 questions on average. The majority of it is multiple choice, and we'll be doing this on iPads, or if you chose to take the exam from home using the Respondus and Lockdown browser, you can do that. Either way, when you click submit, it will automatically grade the exam. Now, the thing about this is that the computer does not typically know how to grade short answer. I can put in answers for it, and if you happen to type exactly that, it will give you credit. But if you vary even slightly, an extra space or something, it automatically just counts everything in the short answer as a 0. So when you get your test back, and it was one of those that had 20 points of it was short answer, and you've got a 50 on your exam, don't freak out, because those 20 points are counted as 0. I have to go through and manually grade those. The exams are worth 12% each, for a total of 60% of your grade. The final exam is a cumulative departmental final. There's nothing I can do about that. It's a state requirement, so keep that in mind when you're writing your summaries. And when you go back to study for all of that, the summary lectures in class are your best friend. That combined with the summaries you wrote should put you in a really good position to do well on the final, and the finals are worth 20% of your grade. There is an extra credit available in the course. Traditionally, I do a 2-page paper over topics that students have had difficulty with on the first few exams, but since we are expanding the format of the summaries, then you can turn in any assignment that you did in the summary for the final, or for the extra credit, and that is worth 25 points on your lowest exam, not the final, because this is due by the final. The latest you can turn this in is when you walk in to take the final. It's worth 25 points on your lowest exam, which is roughly 3% of the course as a whole. Just think about it like when you were in your honors courses and they add the 3 points on at the end. It's basically that. Grades will be calculated according to a standard 10-point grade scale. So 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 89 it's B, so on and so forth. There are, or so on and so forth. The finals worth 20% or 20 points. The exams are 60 points, 12 points each. Quizzes are worth 10 points. Summaries are worth 10 points. The summaries are 2 points each, because I know for sure that we will have to turn in 5, 1 for each exam. The quizzes might vary depending on the number of days that we're there, if we happen to miss a day. So that's not precisely set in stone how much each individual one is worth, but collectively they are worth 10 points. You have a total of 100 points for the course. Each grade item is converted to a decimal and then multiplied by the value of its grade type. For instance, if you had an exam that you scored 80% on, that exam is worth 12 points. So you would take 12 times 0.8, which would equal 9.6 points. You repeat this process for each graded item, and then you add the products, and you have your total score out of 100. So with that in mind, that's everything you need to know for how the course is going to be formatted. I would go ahead and start on the first of your lectures right after this, or whenever you get an opportunity to, and I'll see you in class.